Evening, everybody, and welcome to 3SPN with BL. And tonight we're going to talk about Victor Cruz, who's just released by the Giants after 7 years with them. So, Victor Cruz, as we'll get more about his story and talk about the decision a little towards the end. So, he was undrafted out of UMass and spent 7 years on the Giants, and it was just a remarkable story. Probably one of the better stories in sports history, and certainly the past decade. So, Victor Cruz, if you haven't read his biography, Out of the Blue, it's just an outstanding book. It's one of the best books I've ever read. Get on Amazon.com. Again, it's great. So, anyways, he was born in Paterson, New Jersey. They were not rich, but he had a good family. They worked hard to make sure he had a good life. And so, actually, his first sport was basketball. In high school, he was much better at basketball than football. And then after his junior year, really became a star football player and, struggled on SAT the first few times. Couldn't quite get into UMass. Eventually did after a year later and then didn't play much, He was, academically ineligible. He didn't play till his fourth year, a red shirt. Well, he was a 6-year senior, so finally got going there. And before I get to that, he met Michael Strahan in the spring of 2007 while he was in community college, and Michael Strahan basically told him that, hey, he can be something. He doesn't have to fail. And he did, and had a couple good years at UMass, and then he's undrafted, so it's April 2010, right? And you're thinking some of these big-time guys, are, they're at the draft, they're attending just, 30 miles northwest, I think, down in New York, Northeast, at the Radio City Musical Hall at the draft. And then while he was at his apartment in Paterson, he was just watching the draft, thinking, am I ever going to make it? And the Giants offered him a contract. And August 16th, 2010, the new stadium's open. No one knew Victor Cruz was going into that game. I think he had 3 touchdown catches, 165 yards at one. That one-handed touchdown catch, that's really when Victor Cruz kind of became, some people started to notice him. But really that year he didn't play much. 2011 was kind of his turning point. An injury kind of let him play. He saw what he did against the Eagles. He caught a pass and then basically crossed over, broke, Nnamdi Asomugha and Kurt Coleman's ankles right on that one play and scored a touchdown. That's kind of when he started the famous salsa dance, which really, that's kind of his trademark, the salsa. And then he made some great catches, Later that year, he made a spectacular one-handed catch over Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman, which that was before they were kind of the Legion of Boom, so kind of interesting thing to see right there. And, he made a lot of great plays throughout the year. But one of my favorite memories of Victor Cruz of all time is, I was at that Giants-Jets game back in 2011. It was Week 16, 7-3. So he caught the ball, and he faked out Antonio Cromartie, went down the sidelines. Someone dove at him, missed. I believe that was Eric Smith, and he scored a 99-yard touchdown. Which a 99-yard touchdown, that's the farthest possible touchdown that you can score from scrimmage, which has been done by about 13 people. Has not been done by since, which was remarkable since a year earlier, no one knew who he was. 3 months earlier, people started to figure it out. But when that happened, I was there. I was sitting not at that sideline, but across, and I was dying to go to that game. Couldn't wait. One of the better games I've ever been to, and just that's when I knew Victor Cruz was really could be a great player and great playmaker that year. And then made another play that really helped them seal the deal against the Cowboys. And then throughout the playoffs was spectacular. And against the 49ers, he had the game of his life. Against the Patriots, his numbers-wise wasn't great, but scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Think about it. A year earlier, no one knew who he was. And 2 years earlier, he's probably working out, getting ready for the draft, hoping he could be drafted, getting ready for free agent camps and all that stuff. But, in 2 years, he goes from no one knows who he is, undrafted free agent out of UMass, to catching a touchdown in the Super Bowl and 100 million people seeing that salsa dance. Come on, what a story. What a story. And that's only the beginning. The next year was spectacular as well. Made some huge plays that year as well. 2013 was pretty good, but then another moment of his career when he hit the low point of his career. Remember how a few minutes earlier we talked about how in Philadelphia, how he made that play. Yeah, he also made another one too. Kyle, he destroyed Thompson won that game. It was kind of kind of changed two careers right there. So, anyways, he goes for a ball, misses it. Shreds one of his knees. You see him being carried off the field. He's crying, which you couldn't blame him. He worked so hard to get there, and I'm sure at that moment, he saw for Earl Thomas earlier this year. You see it all the time. Guys might be thinking that brief moment, in the moment their careers are over. Well, he came back the next year, battled some injuries, and then this year, Odell Beckham, which Odell Beckham, they're opposites. Odell Beckham played the national spotlight at LSU. He was a first round pick. But the plays I've seen Odell Beckham make this year kind of remind me of what Victor Cruz did, 4 or 5 years ago in his prime, which, and then Odell Beckham, he became the main receiver while he was hurt. They only played 4 combined games going into this year, 2016. Sterling Shepard took over. Victor Cruz was no longer the same after playing 4 out of the possible 32 games, so that's an average of only 2 games a year, and basically, I think he played 6. Anyways, hardly played at all. It was nice how he was able to score a touchdown against the Cowboys on the first game of the year. That was remarkable. He made that great one-in catch against the Saints, made some big plays this year, but clearly his numbers were way down, really, since Sterling Shepard emerged. And like I said, he's making a lot of money, and, that playoff game, they lost that, and believe it or not, that's going to be the last image of his career as a New York Giant. Losing that playoff game in Lambeau Field, which in some ways is kind of sad since, I don't know, for the past 5-6 years, he was kind of the popular guy in New York, hometown hero. Helped huge part of why the Giants won a Super Bowl and why they even made it to the playoffs at all that year, 5 years ago. So anyways, did the boat party have anything to do with his release? I don't think so. I mean, you look at some of the other guys there. Sterling Shepard is a rookie. No one complained about him. I mean, people were blasting Odell Beckham throughout the case. And Victor Cruz, I don't know. I don't think it had anything to do with it. He's just having fun, No one else got really attention for it except for Odell Beckham. So anyways, did I see the release coming? Well, as of today, I wasn't really thinking about it. Are they going to release him? I wasn't thinking about it. So in some ways, I'd say yes. I was very surprised to see that. I thought really last year he made some big plays. I thought, okay, he's going to come back. Yes, he's making some money. In other ways, not at all. You saw his way down after being hurt basically the previous 2 years, and then coming back. Clearly, his production's way down. They said, we have Sterling Shepard. Then we have Odell Beckham. And then you really look at, well, what can they do with that cap space? Well, they can use it to re-sign some free agents, maybe to, maybe have a key free safety in, or maybe, re-sign Jason Pierre-Paul, or possibly keep Jonathan Hankins, or I don't know, maybe re-sign him. Maybe they'll use it to sign Le'Veon Bell to be that running back in New York. I mean, I doubt he's coming to New York. He's staying with Pittsburgh, but there's so many reasons why. And they also cut Rashard Jennings as well. So, look, they saved about $12 million in cap space right there. So what I think of that move, you know what? If you're a fan of the Giants, Victor Cruz, it's obviously very emotional. I know he wanted to stay there. I know if you're a fan, you could be somewhat shocked. So, but, I really don't. I think the Giants had to do it. They had to free up the cap space in order to make those moves I was possibly talking about. Again, I don't know what they're going to do with it. And who does Victor Cruz play for? Does he play for any other teams? Does he? Well, maybe he could go to New England and be maybe the third receiver there. And, maybe he could go to Baltimore. I've heard talks of that. I think he's going to play. I've heard he wants to play. I've already heard talks of teams signing him. We'll see what happens in free agency. I think he could go to, possible Super Bowl contenders. And I think he still has I think he can still make those plays. Yes, he's not as explosive as he was, say, 4, 5, 6 years ago. But look, I think Victor Cruz can still play. He had a remarkable journey. I mean, think about it. 7 years ago, I don't think anyone knew who Victor Cruz was unless you were a UMass football fan or, someone from Patterson who, knew him in high school or watched him play football. But look, what a remarkable career. And I want to say this other thing. No, I'm not doing any comparisons, but I just want to say some similarities and differences. the person who he kind of reminds me of, and think you can kind of compare it to. Look, the person I'm comparing him to is much better. I'm not trying to say he's exactly like him, but he reminds me a little bit of his LeBron James. Local kid. He's from Patterson, not far from the Meadowlands, and what he did is, he brought a lot of energy to the Giants. Made some huge plays. Huge reason why. In some ways, he kind of carried them to the playoffs that year. The last two games, he made some huge plays. Jets and Cowboys, and then throughout the playoffs. And then, he's a huge star for them. And, exact opposite. Not the most hype athlete probably in sports history. He was the exact opposite. Was completely undrafted and, got his attention from, hard work and building his way up from the bottom to the top. And that's what he did. And career-wise, he's nowhere near as good. But I just thought that was a little bit of a comparison. Kind of hometown kid, a hero in his hometown, emotional leaving. I mean, there's also Tony Gwynn with the Padres and stuff, maybe if you talk about that. But really, that's what I kind of think of it as maybe. Carmelo Anthony is a New York Knick in some ways. So anyways, yeah, there's some similarities and differences to other athletes. But yeah, he's a remarkable story, all those years in New York, I won't forget that. I don't think Giants fans will. And the Giants, I think his number 80 should be retired, even if he was only there for 7 years. Certainly be in their Ring of Honor. Is he a Hall of Famer? No, he's not. But just a great player in New York. If you were a sports fan anyway from 2010 to 2016, the past 5 years, and you'd be well aware of Victor Cruz. So Victor Cruz, you know what? He had a great career in New York. I hope you can play a couple more years. Still make those same plays, and we'll see what you do in the next few years. And look, you know what? I'd love to interview you. So that's all I gotta say, and thank you for listening.